Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Behind the Post. My next guest has been at her current company, NXP, for over 9 years now, exploring communications and social media. She's also now the head of social media, and she's been in that role for over a year. When she's offline, you can find her chasing after her toddler while trying to convince her two old dogs to move just a little bit faster. She often finds the time to head out for a run and occasionally dabbles in creating a mess with a new DIY craft project. So without further ado, please welcome Vanessa Lowe to the show. Vanessa, are you ready to go behind the post with me?
Yes, really looking forward to it. Thank you.
Amazing. I'm also really looking forward to this conversation. I'm so excited to have this conversation on Behind the Post. I think we're about to jump into is kind of new to the podcast episodes we've had. And I know it's something that marketers are really eager to learn more about. But before we get into all the details, please can you give our listeners a brief look into your professional journey?
Sure. So I started with NXP. We're a semiconductor company for those who don't know us. So, and if you don't know semiconductors, they're the little tiny powerful chips that are inside your computer, phone, your contact list, your credit card, inside the automotive space. So you've probably interacted with many of our chips without knowing it. I've been with NXP now 10 years. I started as an intern. I was actually responsible for creating whiteboard animation videos about our technology. The primary technology was NFC, which is what enables that contactless payment. Um, and I would storyboard, I would narrate, and I would animate these videos. So that was the beginning of my journey. I then also had roles in internal communications and executive communications, and have been leading the social media team for the past year and a half now.
Amazing. So with leading the social media team, what does your role entail now compared to what you did in the past?
Sure. So this is a new team. I think and this is probably familiar for many other B2B marketers. Social media was something that it took us a while to finally recognize was an important and strategic channel. It wasn't something that you should just blast out everything and anything that you wanted. Um, but several years ago, I think 4 or 5 years ago, we had multiple marketers. I think 12 to 15 different people had direct access to our channels. It was just a free for all. We finally brought on a junior marketing strategist or specialist to lead everything. And then a year and a half ago, we finally realized we really need to step this up. This needs to become a strategic place. So my role has been putting in the strategy is really helping us come to one tone of voice, establishing an editorial calendar. Right now, we're really working on a shift towards ensuring the right content mix. So ensuring that we have content that's really helping our channels grow, really helping nurture then those people who do discover us, and then of course some traffic generation and some sales as well, which is always important. Uh,
Definitely. Yeah, and I
yeah.
think it's really important that you just shone a light on the fact that social media really is the strategic platform that can have this impact. And it is really important.
Definitely. And I think we've seen this now more and more. And there's studies that also show that I think it's something like 86% of B2B decision makers are convinced or are that LinkedIn and other social media platforms plays an impact on their purchasing decisions. So the numbers are there. And I'm glad that our team is really finally starting to see that there is importance and there's a lot of potential in these channels.
Yeah, definitely. This hearing you say this is like music to my ears because this is exactly how we feel. And social
Yeah.
media is so important. And you mentioned LinkedIn, which obviously is a very big platform for B2B buyers. So it's really important for B2B businesses to be on there and have a strategy. And now that we've segued into LinkedIn, I really can't wait to ask you about the LinkedIn live sessions. So for those listening who don't know, NXP has been experimenting with their marketing strategies, and this has led to them adopting LinkedIn live sessions. And I know there's a lot of interest with marketers on how it works. And I think a lot probably haven't spoken to someone who is doing it. A lot of people don't know someone personally who's doing it. So Vanessa's here to explain to you guys why they chose to do it. That's kind of what I want to ask you to start with. Like, what is LinkedIn live sessions for those who don't know? How does it work? And can you let me know like what inspired you to start using it?
Sure. So we did our very first LinkedIn Live session at a major industry event. So it's called CES, it's the Consumer Electronics Show. It is our top and most important event for us as a company. There's over 130,000 attendees to this. It's in Vegas every year. And we did this in 2022. So it was our first session. We had an industry analyst that we've been working on, and we had a big product or a technology that we were talking about at that show. So that was called Matter. It's a wireless communication standard. And leading up to that, we knew that LinkedIn was our biggest audience. So it has, I think, 9 to 10 times the amount of followers as our secondary channel. So we have over 670,000 followers currently on LinkedIn. Facebook comes in at second at like 80,000, and then Twitter's after that. And we're not active on any other channel. Well, we're active on YouTube, but it steps down from there. So when we were looking and considering doing some live streams, we knew that LinkedIn had a potential. And that was still, since it was 2022, we were still kind of like going through that COVID phase. It was so we were having this hybrid approach to the event. Everything that we shared, we had a duplicate version of the demo in a virtual technology showroom. And when we were discussing, well, how else can we bring this show into this digital realm, LinkedIn Live just became part of the conversation. I had read that it was possible to do live streaming. So it is a live streaming platform like what you see on other social media networks, but it's not as commonly used. I think possibly because LinkedIn does not have a native streaming tool themselves. You do need to connect using a third-party tool. So that can be, a bit of a scary hurdle if you're not that technical of a person. And I remember we had multiple calls and preparations to make sure that technically we were capable of setting up. And we did have some hiccups, which I can share as well. It was not everything ran smoothly, but it was successful at the end of the day. For that particular session, we had it gated, so we wanted people to register for it. And we've now shifted from that. So we've just come off. That was the only live stream that we did on LinkedIn for 2022. But for 2023, we knew that we wanted to do more. And coming into CES again this year, it was an integral part of our social media plan. We had live streams planned for at least once a day. The goal was twice a day. We did run into some bandwidth trouble, so that I can also share some of our lessons learned there. If I could summarize our whole experience with LinkedIn Lives, it would be we're constantly experimenting, constantly learning, and then adapting. And we're seeing powerful results. So these are typically getting 9 to 10 times the amount of impressions. They get significant comments and interactions and engagements with our audience. And this, we even received a comment from someone this year that said, your CES coverage has been amazing. So our audience was really appreciated because many people and many of our customers don't ever get the opportunity to travel to Vegas to see our booth. Our booth is also limited. It's for customers and by invitation only. So there's a ton of people who maybe are curious or interested in NXP that will never have the opportunity to come see us. And these live streams were such a nice way to connect where our audience was and bring them along with the journey. So we're super excited to continue doing these certainly at events and then in other moments throughout the year too.
It sounds really exciting. And I think it's also for the audience that get to be there and get to see what it's like. And it's interactive for them as well. Yeah. And I know you mentioned there were some hurdles and I really want to ask you about them. But before we do, I just want to hear about your strategy first. What is the strategy around it that you built and how did you promote them coming up to it? Was there
Sure. So for the first one, we actually set it up as a LinkedIn event. So we use the event feature within LinkedIn. You can set up as an online session and LinkedIn Live there. And we've since decided that was a little bit too clunky. So that was kind of one of the hurdles that we ran into. Again, since LinkedIn doesn't do the streaming itself, you need to connect with a third-party tool. And you can only connect like the stream key like 30 minutes before the session. And I remember there was a moment where it looked like we weren't going to be able to connect to that actual event. And we had put some paid promotion behind that at the actual event. We've been promoting it. And I thought, oh my goodness, we're just gonna have to like scrap it, somehow post and tell everyone on LinkedIn, just kidding, like come join this other event that we're gonna be doing right
It's a
now.
terrifying moment for any marketer.
It was a terrifying moment. But it ended up working out. We were able to figure it out. But now how we approach it is we communicate it kind of like how you would a webinar. So we don't do it as an event feature, but we communicate the time and date in advance and say, mark your calendars. We've also we did a live stream for a product announcement. So that was something we did at the end of January. And that was a sit down, more formal interview discussion where we had the technical team. I know you had also kind of hinted that you wanted to know a bit more of the technical setups, and I can talk to you because we've experimented with that as well, where we've had a camera crew and we've had two cameras and a switching board where it can flip back and forth. But we've also done it just selfie style on my phone, where it's even more authentic and real. But for this, we've done, coming back to the promotion piece, we've done countdown tickers and calendar reminders on our website. And we just tell people go visit our profile at that time. When you go live, the banner that's typically at the top of your profile or your company page is then replaced with the video. So if someone pops onto your company profile, they're going to see that video come in at the top.
Wow, that's amazing. That's interesting to know that they do that. And you spoke a little bit about how like that you had a camera crew and how you're doing it in selfie mode. So I want to just jump into recording day. Like what happens? You're there. What am I seeing as somebody somebody sitting at home or someone sitting on their desk? And what does it look like?
So LinkedIn will push out a notification. It doesn't go to all of your followers, but it does go to a certain segment. It kind of looks at who's currently online, who's more likely to engage and open this. So it pushes out a push notification, which we had hoped for, but we also discovered accidentally prior to our very first LinkedIn session. I accidentally went live to our hundreds of thousands of followers. Luckily with just a blank screen, but we had 60 comments and over 300 people joined us live in that 30-second bit where we were accidentally live the
Well, at
day
least the
before.
push notifications work. That's
So it works, exactly. And we discovered that, and that was really nice to see that people were joining us, even though we hadn't communicated or planned any of it in advance. So that there were some lessons to learn out of that. But if you don't accidentally go live and you're planning and you're really preparing for day for going live day, I'll take you through the two different examples. So the first one is a more formal like panel discussion or an interview session. For those, we've had an IT person who's monitoring. We usually have two cameras, one that's fixed on a wide angle so you can see all participants, and then a second one that's moving and can then be the zoom in on the person who's speaking. And then to have that, we also need some kind of like switching board. We also have microphones, so that's all connected in. And then it connects in. We've been using a tool called Restream, which is a streaming tool. You can connect and stream to multiple channels at the same time. We've also used OBS, but I think Restream has been our most stable because that was just the easiest and smoothest. It's also one of the LinkedIn third-party recommendations. They have a list of different third-party streaming tools that they recommend, but Restream has been the one that we've enjoyed working with. And you can do kind of a one-time setup with Restream, and then it's connected, and all you have to click is go live. During the session itself, I like to typically start off and welcome the audience, explain to them why we're here, and then doing that multiple times throughout the session. So you never know when people are joining you, and so that's also something and you've probably seen that on other live streams on social media. So always at some point saying like, hey, for all those who are just joining us, like we're here in the Smart Home Innovation Lab, like and encouraging them and bringing them in and inviting them to ask questions. For those types of sessions, we do take questions live from the live stream and anything that we're getting comments on. And to manage that, we have an additional team member who's kind of offline looking through to see the comments and pull out the gem of questions. Because what we see a lot of is people are like, hi from the Philippines, and like, hi from, this place. And there's a lot of that clutter. And it's great. It's great for, the algorithm, and it's boosting these posts. And
Yeah.
also nice to see the audiences like connecting with each other. But it's very difficult as a moderator to go through all of that. So we have someone typically offline who's then skimming through to see what questions do they want. And then they send it to me over Teams. So it's just an internal chat. So it looks like I'm reading the question live from,
Yeah. It's a
from
good
the
hat.
live.
Yeah.
But I'm not.
Yeah. Wow, you
Yeah.
really went into detail. It's so interesting to hear. I think this is really useful for anyone. They can literally go and implement something based on what you're saying. This is really helpful. Because I was going to ask, if you're recording and you're running around or there's a team, like how can you keep those conversations going, which is such a crucial part of these lives as well.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's good
And
to
that's what,
know.
when we do, so that's the like formal, more expensive, more time intensive
Yeah.
sit down one. But at the show, so at CES this year, it was just me running around with my mobile phone and a gimbal.
So then
And
how
it's
did you manage when you were doing that, how did you manage audience engagement that time?
we told them we would answer their questions later. So we
Okay.
did not do any live, and these were all very short live streams. So they were 5 minutes, which has worked for us. LinkedIn, if you go and you look and see what LinkedIn itself recommends, they say like have at least 10 to 15 minutes minimum in length because that allows time for users to join. We found that they've been still very successful with 5 minutes or less. And I think especially for these events where it's just this quick pop on. And then what we do is we go back and I chase down then our technical owners and I say, hey, here are the, 6 to 10 questions that we've received. And then the brand responds to them later. And then that also helps kind of encourage and again, kind of keep it live and interesting for the algorithm to keep boosting and promoting.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah.
Um,
And then just to also say that the live stream will be saved automatically to LinkedIn. So it doesn't
okay.
disappear. It becomes a longer piece of content that's there. You can also then download the content itself from Restream. So if you wanted to like edit it and repackage it, all of that is possible.
Yeah, I think that's really good to know because the amount of times maybe if someone does a webinar and they're like, oh my God, is this recording? Or just
Yeah,
like anything, like it's good to know that it's saved and it's there.
exactly.
So thank you so much for answering all those questions. It's so interesting to hear like how it actually happens on recording day and the strategy you have behind it. And you mentioned before that you did run into a few hurdles. So I do want to start with the positives first because I feel like this is good to hear for people listening that are thinking about executing this. It does sound like a big undertaking and it sounds like a big project to execute, which maybe might hold people back when they're thinking about what to prioritize and when they're deciding. So I'm wondering what aspects that you thought were going to be really difficult that actually took you by surprise for being a lot easier than maybe you had expected it to be.
I think the amount of impression, like how it's been received by LinkedIn itself and the algorithm.
I think
The fact that it does push a notification and that there will be people who join you was such a relief because I didn't know what to expect when we did that for the first time. And that has certainly been easier. And like I said, we're seeing, I think these typically get on average like 50K impressions or more. And our average post gets maybe like 8,000 kind of across the board when we
wow,
look at our 2023 numbers. And it often these will outperform other forms of native video as well. So
that's really
it
interesting.
is, and um, the beauty of what we did this year at CES was everything was piggybacking off of longer form content that was already planned. So we had worked with a lot of our executives and they were filming content for YouTube or for these like longer videos. So they were already prepped on their content. The talking points were there. I just needed to steal them and say, hey, can we go live for a few minutes? They were,
Yeah.
of course, prepped in advance. They knew.
Yeah. You didn't
um,
catch them off guard.
but, it was essentially 15 minutes max of additional work for massive results. And we've gotten, I think it's over 24,000 video views on one of our posts, and the YouTube video received maybe 3K. views. So massive differences
Yeah.
in terms of performance.
Yeah.
And that's been, yeah, incredible, and something that, we're wanting to do more of with.
Yeah, I think that's really useful to share for people thinking like, oh my God, it's such a big undertaking, it's so much work, but the results are so worth it. Kind of
Yes,
what you're saying, it's worked really well for you, so it could work well for other people as well. I think it's a really important
it
takeaway.
could. I think, and you had talked about challenges. I think the challenge is um, not everyone is comfortable in front of the camera, and not everyone is like a social media personality. So it is something different. But there certainly are those people, I'm sure, within different companies who feel comfortable because you're there in front of potentially tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people. It is scary being live in front of potentially the world. And but if you can kind of overcome that hurdle, and for me personally, I had sort of trained up for these types of activities. I used to be on the board of our young community, so like one of our employee resource groups, and I led a series of executive career insights interviews. So I would stand in front of 50 to 60 people in the audience, and I would interview our top executives.
Wow.
And that was kind of, and I had voluntarily started that. But that I think gave me some of this
Yeah.
experience of knowing how, I mean, you understand this from doing podcasts. You have your list of questions, but you need to find these ways to tie them in and to respond and connect, but like shift towards the direction you need to go.
Yeah.
That is a skill that has to be trained. And I think that is partly why these sessions have been successful, is because um, I have decent interviewing skills, and that
Yeah.
does bring some energy to it.
Yeah.
And
I
now
mean,
the challenge for us is how do we roll that out, and how do we train up other team members to be able to do this around the world.
yeah, I think it's really important to be able to work on the spot, to talk on the spot, and if something's not going the right way, to change it. And I think it's really important, especially for the LinkedIn live session. So that's a really interesting hurdle that you're explaining. Is there any like lessons that you learn along the way other
Um,
than the public speaking?
yeah. Other lessons, I guess, just roll with it. The other thing would be to prep. So that is something that I'm now doing more of. I'm interviewing people on often highly technical subjects that I'm not a technically, I'm a marketer, and I studied art history. I'm not an engineer, and I'm talking to, engineers about deep tech.
Yeah.
And after CES, I recognized like I need a bit more briefing. So that was something that we took as a lesson learned moving into this product announcement, which we did at the end of January. I said I really want to be able to like riff and like banter back to the person and have some points that I can say, oh, and I know like, this product is really popular for da da da, and add some comments back. So that is something that we're now implementing, is um, having I guess myself, or I have a team member who will be doing this for her first live stream
Wow.
in April at a show. And so that's also for her saying,
Yeah.
okay, make sure that Monica's really craft and understanding and has that opportunity to learn the key points so that she can also add some comments back and make this a conversation.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be much more interesting than just listening to someone give a monologue.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, because hearing that conversation is a lot more engaging, as you're saying, to tune into. So I was going to ask you, you've gone into the results of what you've seen from the live sessions. And I think maybe this could be linked in terms of like engaging and authenticity. But why do you think that it's been so successful for you? And I'm sorry if I've stolen the answer.
Oh no. um, I think it's a combination. I think it's really that we're being such an authentic company. It's different for us. It's this really like raw view into us. There's less of like the marketing cleanliness and the packaging that we often do around products, but it's really like us, and it's me, like especially when it was the selfie style, I would like literally like turn it around and like flick the flip camera with me, like you can, and it's natural.
Just
We're
running through booths.
yeah, no, literally. Doing that kind of stuff, and you see this more authentic and like real side of things, and I think
Yeah.
that's been partly why this has resonated so well, because it's our audience is mostly engineers, and they want to see the tech, they want to understand it, they want that opportunity to like understand those demos, and we share it on YouTube and videos, but they're typically like these more condensed and marketing forward um, clean videos. And I think there is something about this authenticity.
Yeah. And I think it's a really, I think sometimes with B2B, we can find it could be a bit hard to find a way to be engaging, is what I
Yeah.
would say. And I think this way it makes it exciting for your industry, makes it exciting for your organization, and it's very interactive. So you can
Exactly.
interact. Well, that's what we want to do as brands. We want to engage and interact with our audiences. And this is
Yeah.
a very clear and good tactic to do to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if we can just zoom out for a second, and you have the LinkedIn live sessions, but your overall marketing goals and the results you're having from
Yeah.
these sessions, how are they tying with the overall goals?
So our big kind of key overall marketing organization goals is to drive new visitors to our website, to ultimately increase our leads. Uh, and where social media comes into play, we've established that our key KPI for the year is on impressions, that we're really positioning social media, and LinkedIn in particular, as the space for brand awareness. We know that the algorithm deprioritizes posts that have links in it. We know that also user behavior, people just want to scroll. They kind of want to consume the content on the platform. We see this also from a rise in carousels, being very popular, especially on LinkedIn. And it's not a traffic generating space. And as counterintuitive as it sounds, and as I have to convince our leadership team of, in order to get more leads and more unique visitors to nxp.com, we need to get more people to just know about NXP. And that's where social media comes in. And that's why we're really positioning and saying impressions are a top thing. Doesn't mean we're going to ignore links, but it's then establishing that balance. So our goal for the year is to have a balance between three types of content. One that's all about growth, so this easily shareable, easily like engageable content, like the LinkedIn Lives, other like including other native videos, doing a lot more polls because we've seen that also really working, and kind of more of this like social media, this easy and fun content, that just gets new eyeballs in to see us and understand and recognize us as a company. And then we'll have the nurture pillar, which is kind of diving in, and the LinkedIn Lives is somewhat of that nurture as well, since we are still talking about our technology and talking about things that are relevant for us as a company. But that would be where we'd have more of these carousels, kind of thinking through this longer form content and how can we make it consumable on platform. And then the third piece is the sell. And so that's going to be thinking about the traffic generating piece. We've been really reversed in the past. Actually, I think we've primarily only done the sell piece in the past, which means, and potentially some nurture, but that means that eventually you'll dry up. You'll go through, you'll nurture, and you'll sell to all of your existing people, and then that's it. And so bringing in that impressions, and that's where the LinkedIn Live does help with some of that, because we do see that they have massive potential for impressions when compared. They're not as great as polls, to be honest. So polls are still king,
Yeah.
queen, I suppose I should say. And there are a few native videos or miscellaneous things that will pop to the top, but we know that LinkedIn live sessions are a very consistent and solid way to get great impressions and to still nurture it and to really convince people about our technology.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear these results have been so big for you. And as you're saying, with all the different other marketing aspects that you've been doing in your overall strategy, I am interested to know, because there was, I don't want to say less knowledge about it, but people are doing it less and there's less people to compare yourselves with. So I'm just interested if you had any pushback when you were deciding to implement them.
We actually did it, and it might have just been because of right timing. We had all come out of COVID. You know, everyone had sort of scrambled to go into this live streaming or into this high, I guess with COVID, we were in like a fully digital space for events, and then hybrid felt natural. So at the time, there wasn't any pushback for the original one. And I also didn't receive any for this year. And it could just be that I just said it so so matter of factly that
We're doing it.
yeah, we're doing it this year,
Yeah.
and that's when it happened.
No, it's interesting.
I know that's not always the case with marketing teams, and it is something that is potentially risky for, you know, you're there in front of a lot of people, and it's a very public space. But so far, everything's gone fine. We also didn't get too many negative comments. I had one day, it was the start of our CES promotion, and I just did like a very quick pop on to say, hey, we're here for the week, you know, be sure to follow us. And the connection was terrible, and it was me. I didn't have the right gimbal, so it was like shaky.
Yeah.
And someone commented like, "Oh, I love semi-professional live streams." And at the end of the day, I responded from the brand channel. I was like, "Hey, we all have to start somewhere, and like we're
Yeah,
just
it's true.
trying."
Yeah,
And
I
that was
think,
the worst thing that we got.
yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's so valuable to say, because I think people are nervous maybe because it's live, it's unpredictable, it hasn't been done before by their own business. And they're probably just like, oh my God, but what if we fall at the first hurdle? But I think that's where you can't get stuck, because it's after those hurdles where it's going to be amazing. So it's interesting to hear, because I think in different companies, there's like a different level of risk of what they see as risky and what gets pushed back and what doesn't get pushed back. But
right.
it's incredible that even though you didn't get any, this is the results that you've got, and it clearly does work.
Yes. And that reminds me, there's a famous quote, I don't know who it's by, and it's like, oh, but what if I fall? Oh, but my darling, what if you fly? So
Yes,
I think, yes, there is the
yeah.
risk of failure, but there's also, and we're seeing it with the numbers, that there's a potential for massive success.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's incredible. So honestly, this episode's been amazing. It's been like a how-to LinkedIn live sessions. You got everything you need, the equipment, the software you're using. So I'm just wondering, I wanted to ask, like, what advice, other than like the tactical tips that you already said, but what advice would you give other B2B organizations that are considering incorporating it into their strategy?
Sure. So my advice, and I think I've already shared some of this, but it's really stuck with me. It was from someone who is an Instagram like influencer. She coaches other people on how to leverage Instagram, but this can be applied to other networks. It was really this growth, nurture, and sell content mix, because it's just, she broke it down into such a clear description, and how simple it was, and it just kind of blew my mind. Like, yes, that is how we want to really think about our channel. And so that was kind of the biggest advice so far that's sat with me. And then for those who are thinking about doing the LinkedIn live sessions, if you're really struggling to convince your organization, then try it internally first. Try to do some things. We leverage Viva Engage. So I would, before each of these LinkedIn live sessions that I did this current year, I would pop on and record a 3-minute little mini live session on Viva Engage. It's not really live, you're recording the video on the platform and then push out, but get some experience and show, I think, internally that this is successful, because we also got that from our employees. They were happy and really appreciative that we were showing them the technology that they've worked so hard on, and they often don't see where it ends up. And then go back and try again. But, you know, part of our role as social media managers is to stay on top of the trends, and potentially to be one of the forerunners in some of these spaces. And that would be, I think, something, my advice would be to show that and say, this is my role, is to really make sure we're staying on top of things that are happening. And this is something that's becoming more common, and has a lot of potential for us.
Yeah, I think that's really incredible advice to give. And I was going to ask, like, what's the best piece of advice that you have? But unless there's something else you want to add, like, I think that's really important for people to know. And I think it's a good way to look at things. There's so much, as you said before, like there could be risk, there could be a hurdle, but what's on the other side is so valuable, and it can really boost your strategy. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And
Exactly.
you need to keep up with those trends and see what's going on around you.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, at the end of the day, this is going to be a much easier sell than like a TikTok video. So I think maybe go in high and unsettle for LinkedIn live streams. Like this feels like a bit more comfortable for conservative B2B brands. So it's
Amazing. With that, I just want to say thank you so, so much for joining me. And thank you for literally revealing all your tips, tricks, previous challenges, things that you've learned. I've learned a lot from this episode. So I'm sure loads of other people are going to learn a lot. So I just want to thank you again for joining me and coming behind the post.
well, thank you so much for having me. And to all those who are listening, you're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn.